I'm Leon Todd for G66. Welcome to another Tuesday tone tip. On today's video, I'm on the FX3, and I want to do a quick overview of some of the new features, functions, and generally enjoyable things that have been added to the Fractal ecosystem via free firmware updates. I'm starting with a new amp model that was added, the Brit Studio 20. There were several amp models added over the course of the year, including the Diamante Fire. There is a channel of the PVH 6160. There's a new Plexi in there. There's a few other little treats, but my favorite out of all of them is this Brit Studio 20. To start, I'm going to pair it up with this Fender Buddy Guy Strat, which has some lace sensors in it. I'm on the neck pickup. I've got my go-to IR LTTV Mix 7, and I've got a bit of the Rich Hall reverb. Let's just have a listen to the way I've dialed this in for a kind of cleanish edge of breakup style tone. I'm certainly enjoying that. This particular guitar is very bright, even on the neck pickup, which is why I've kept the treble gain, the treble, and the presence quite low, and I've added a bit of normal gain and some extra bass and mid-range in there. Let's quickly go to the speaker tab in here, because the speaker drive algorithm was overhauled in an update, and you've got the new speaker thump parameter. There's also a whole bunch of new impedance curves to play around with to really dial in the feel of these amp models. I personally like to turn the speaker thump up to about 5 on most of these. And for these kind of edge of breakup bluesy tones, I feel like taking the speaker drive up to 3 or 4 really adds a wonderful kind of grit and dimensionality to the sound. Let's do this. Let's get it ready to go on 4. You'll hear it at the stock settings, then I'll hit enter and it will be doubled. For dirtier sounds, I generally like to keep this a little lower, around 1 or 2. Speaking of which, I've actually got another amp block in here, the USA Lead Mid-Gain, and you can see that I've got it connected in series. The block mixer algorithm was also overhauled in here, so that if you want to have 2 separate amp blocks and have them bypassed or flip-flopped between scenes, you can now just connect them in series with the bypass mode set to through, and you can get gapless switching in there. Let's hear it. Super smooth. This also applies to the FM9 because it has 2 amp blocks as well. Something else that applies to the FX3 and FM9 is in the delay block, there is this new LFO3 that can be used for panning or general spread or level style effects in there, as well as 3 new delay types. I'm using the pan delay type in here. I've just turned the mix up to 30%. And you can see in here that LFO3 is set to target the pan control. Echo pan is set at 100%. So the LFO value multiplies this value in here, and those delays will swim across the stereo spectrum. There is the stereo trem delay, which is absolutely awesome in here. The LFO3 is targeting the level parameter in here. So if I bring that up and we use, say, a slightly longer delay around like 800 milliseconds, this is just a really beautiful way to add something textural to your delay sounds. Speaking of things that give you lovely delays, let's go to the multi-tap delay block, and the quad parallel delay type had cross feedback added to it, and there's this new Aurora delay type in here, which at the stock settings with the mix up around 25-30% is one of my favorite lead delays ever. If you've heard the Keeley halo pedal, the signature Andy Timmons pedal, this pretty much does that sound. And while we're talking about things that can give you beautiful delays, the pitch block had a new dual detune delay type added in there, which takes the dual detune, adds up to, I think it's 2 seconds of delay on each voice, and gives you the ability to have cross feedback. So I've used all of those settings in there. You can see some slightly offset detunes, some slightly offset delays, some cross feedback in there. This creates an absolutely lovely ambient pad. I'm back on that clean Brit Studio 20. A long requested feature that was added this year is the Scene Ignore feature. I'm going to use the pitch block virtual capo to demonstrate it. Previously, without Scene Ignore, you would have to set the status of this block per scene, but I can turn Scene Ignore on here, and once I switch this block on, it will be persistent across all of my scenes. If I turn it off, it will also be persistent across all of the scenes. So I've got it set up at the moment to just give me a whole tone down on the virtual capo. What I'm going to do is swap between scene 1 and scene 2 on here. You saw there when I turned it off on scene 2, I went back to scene 1 and that block was off. So Scene Ignore I found incredibly handy for things like the virtual capo, for presets where I might want to have, say, a global stereo pitch detune, and if I'm playing in mono at a gig, I can turn that off and it will stay off across all my scenes, or I can turn it on if I'm playing in stereo. Another type of application I would use for the Scene Ignore is if I've got like a parametric EQ block to kind of compensate between different guitars, and I swap guitars, flick that particular block on, and it's going to stay on across all of my scenes in there. So a very, very useful bit of functionality in there. The other one are the set lists and songs feature. I've got a standalone video talking about all of these, and there are some great videos up on the G66 channel talking about sets and songs already, but a very brief overview. You can basically enter all the songs that you might have in a set. So for a typical ragdoll gig, there's 13 or 14 songs, and then you can have them saved in your Axe-Fx and then assign them to a given set list. You've got 6 sections per song, so you can just kind of set up your FC controller to work through those whichever way you like, whether it's just go to the next section or to have your 6 sections laid out and go between them. But that is something that was requested for a long time that has been added across the FM3, FM9 and Axe-Fx 3. One last thing which I have failed to mention so far is in the reverb block, you can actually use this as a simple echo because the pre-delay now goes up to 1 second. So you can put in, like, say, a 400 millisecond pre-delay, add a bit of feedback, add a bit of mix in there. I'll add some mix from the reverb block and a nice big time on here, and you can use this as a verbed out echo. Now, of course, the amp block received the Cygnus X2 amp modeling update. All the amp models were updated in there, and they're sounding amazing as ever. But the drive block got some updates and some new types in there. My favorite is this griddle cake drive type based on the Crowther hotcake, but there is also a clon style drive in there as well. There's also a few others like the BB Pre Andy Timmons style drive, but these two are kind of the main ones that I've really been enjoying in here. I will let you hear them with this Brit Studio 20, and let's put, I don't know, the Aurora delay on with a slightly lower mix. I'll take this pre-delay out of the reverb, so I'm just using it as a reverb. Let's get a pre-delay around 20 milliseconds-ish. That will do. Let's hear the griddle cake. There's also been utility updates to things like the FC controllers, foot switching functions, and so much more. I've really only scratched the surface in here. If you haven't seen the Tuesday Tone Tip series, and this is the first one that you're watching, there is over 2 years worth of content on the G66 channel now, and you can also go and check out my personal channel, Leon Todd, where I have a lot of in-depth fractal tutorials and my 5-minute tone series as well. It's pretty stunning what has been added for free to the user. You know, these updates just keep rolling out. Nobody really keeps pace with Fractal with these things, and a lot of these new additions were requests by users in the user base over on the forum. So if you're not a member of the forum, I would highly recommend going and joining it, joining the discussion. There are so many great tips and tricks that you can learn, and you can keep up to date with these amazing firmware updates, which I'm sure are only going to continue in 2023. Let me know your favorite feature that was added to the Fractal ecosystem this year in the comments section below, and tune in next week for another Tuesday Tone Tip. I'll see you all then.